Ladies and gentlemen, spoštovani, spoštovane, I have a special guest tonight. It's Albanian historian and journalist, Olsi Jazexhi. Did I pronounce your name correctly, or did I?
Yes, Aleš. You are one of the few who pronounced it correctly. My surname is Jazexhi.
Yeah, because I was born in ex-Yugoslavia in the 80s, and my mother is Macedonian. That's why I do know some things about at least Kosovo Albanians and about how to pronounce their names. So I obviously got it right. So Olsi, please describe us, help us. What's your work? Describe us your work. What do you do?
Well, I teach history at the University of Durrës here in Albania, and I live most of the time in Tirana, which is the capital of Albania. I'm specialized in the history of late Ottoman Empire and modern Balkan nation states. So from the academic point of view, I studied the process, the birth of Albanians, of Serbs, Greeks, Bulgars, Turks, and what have you. But apart from it, I also deal with issues that are related to the situation of Muslims in the world. I have investigated the process of how can I put it, the suffering of Muslims in Xinjiang, in East Turkestan or China. I deal and I study the situation of Muslim communities in Muslim majority countries that we have in the Balkans, Albania and Kosovo, and also Macedonia. And I also deal with the issue of the Iranian Mujahideens. For your viewers who probably do not know, we here in Albania, we are probably the only European country which hosts the largest terrorist paramilitary base, which are the Iranian Mujahideens. They are an ex-terrorist group. These people, they were Fedayins of Saddam Hussein, who have killed many Arabs, Iranians, and Kurds, but who, after the fall of Saddam Hussein and during the time of the Iran nuclear deal, were brought to Albania. They were brought to Albania under the excuse of taking asylum. But since the coming of the Trump administration into power in the United States, where Trump is a person with, I think, mental issues that he is, and a worshipper of Israel, he has turned the Mujahideens into a very dangerous group, like you had ISIS or Daesh before them, or Jabhat al-Nusra or other terrorist organizations that were used to export terrorism into Syria, Iraq, and the greater Middle East.
Can I read one of your tweets to you, and I will ask you to comment on it. Kosovo and Serbia both pledged loyalty to Greater Fascist Israel. Both agreed to advance the LGBTization agenda against the tradition of Islam and Orthodoxy. Both pledged allegiance to Israel in its fight against the Arab Jerusalem and the Lebanese resistance Hezbollah. Please, can you comment on this tweet?
Oh yes, that tweet came after, when was it, 2 days ago? After the Prime Minister of Kosovo, Abdullah Hoti, who was installed in power in Pristina after the coup that Trump's personal representative Richard Grenell did against Albin Kurti and the president of Serbia, Vucic, after the economic agreement that they signed with each other. And I made this, I wrote this on my Twitter because we in Albania were expecting to find and to see an agreement between two countries, which are Serbia and Kosovo. But what we saw was that the agreement that was signed at the White House was not about Kosovo and Serbia, but was about the greater Israel. Both Kosovo and Serbia were brought to the White House by the personal envoy of Ambassador Trump, Richard Grenell. And instead of these two countries solving their issues, there was nothing like that. But the whole circus that we saw at the White House was about pleasing the fascist government of Benjamin Netanyahu, and also probably pleasing Richard Grenell, who, as far as I know from my Kosovo contacts, he belonged to the LGBT community.
So what's the issue with LGBT community and Israel? It seems to me that the connections between LGBT and Israel, if they are true, implies that Israel is not a religious country or a country of religious Jews, because I presuppose that religious Jews wouldn't be promoting LGBT agenda. What's your opinion on it?
Oh yes, Israel is not a religious country. I've met and I know many religious Jews who even curse the. I prefer to call it a fascist regime of Benjamin Netanyahu because I have personally visited the West Bank and Israel, and I've seen how the Israeli regime discriminates the Palestinians. So, Israel, in my opinion, it pretends to be a secular theocracy, which is a very difficult term to be explained, because when people ask the Polish immigrant Benjamin Netanyahu, what the hell is he doing in Israel, he says that God promised us to come here. So while Netanyahu speaks about God, on the other hand, we see very often Israel pushing LGBT agenda throughout Europe and the world. And this guy, Richard Grenell, if you saw the meeting at the White House between Trump and Vucic and Abdullah Hoti, Trump seemed like he was not the president of the greatest and the most powerful country of the world, but he seemed like he was the property administrator of his Jewish boss, Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't know if you saw the moment when Trump was calling Netanyahu and he had Abdullah Hoti in the front of him, and Trump, who I think is very bad at geography and probably doesn't know where Kosovo is in the map, described what he was doing like a piece from a Middle Eastern country with Israel. And if you saw the situation in the room of Trump, Grenell and Mike Pence, everybody, they were like afraid and they didn't want to upset Trump. And the whole show that was being done there was being done in order to praise Benjamin Netanyahu. So, the situation where the American empire is today is very, very, very funny. It shows that the corrupt Netanyahu regime of Israel has total control over the greatest democracy of the world, which is the United States. And on the other hand, we see two countries who came out of war, Serbia and Kosovo, who, when they go and meet at the White House, instead of resolving their own issues, they are being treated like they're Judea and Samaria, like they are two colonies of Israel, where Netanyahu have to come and to give his blessing for what is going on.
So you believe that President Vucic's take on taking his embassy to Jerusalem is not sincerely his idea, that he was forced into it?
Well, from the videos that we have seen, it seems so. But when it comes to the Albanian side, to the Kosovo side, I think they are sincere. Why? Because the people that Americans have installed into power in Kosovo after the NATO invasion of Kosovo in 1999, these people, they are shepherds. These people have no political experience. They do not understand how the international law works. These people, they take orders from the US Embassy. Here in Tirana, Albania, where I am, we have the same situation. Since the coup that Americans organized in Albania in 1998, 97, when we had the pyramid schemes, every government which comes to power in Albania, they have to take permit for everything from the US Embassy. If somebody doesn't believe me, let them go and read the WikiLeaks report on Albania, and they'll see how every Albanian politician goes to the American embassy almost every week and spies on each other and asks from US officials what to do. The same is the situation in Pristina. I mean, since the declaration of independence of Kosovo in 2008, Kosovo has stuck as a country. It has turned itself into a kind of Nagorno-Karabakh, or into a kind of Turkish Cyprus, or the best example could probably Taiwan, but Taiwan is much better. I mean, Kosovo is not getting any more recognitions because the leaders of Pristina, be them Hashim Thaçi or Abdullah Hoti, they have no freedom to negotiate for their own country. I have, since 2008, keep on writing articles, and I tell to the leaders of Pristina, I tell them, if you want your country to become a real country and to get a recognition from the United Nations Security Council, you have to go to Beijing and to Moscow to talk to Putin and to Xi Jinping, because these are the two major powers who sit at the Security Council and do not allow you to become a real state. But what happens is that in Pristina, the presidents and prime ministers, they have no permit to follow their national interests. And because they take orders from evangelical Christians who work for the US Embassy in Pristina, I mean, they think that only Israel matters. They do not understand the international law. And actually, Hashim Thaçi, who is charged with war crimes by the International Court of Crimes of Yugoslavia, was the first person who was promising to Netanyahu, if you recognize us, we will send our embassy to Jerusalem. These people do not think and do not care for Kosovo. They just want to praise and to make happy Benjamin Netanyahu. They do not think that if they move their embassy to Jerusalem, they are going to humiliate the Muslim world. 49 countries who have Muslim majority, they are going to turn against them the global South, China, Russia, and many countries who refuse to break the international law and agree with illegal annexation by Israel of the Arab territories in the occupied Palestine.
What was the majority of Albanians? What were they? how were they looking at the independence of Kosovo? Were they happy about it? Did they look at it as a second Albania, or a bigger Albania, or expansion of Albania, or were they a bit skeptic about it? What's your stance on independence of Kosovo? What's your vision of relations between United States, Serbia, and Kosovo? It seemed, from the point of view of Serbs and ex-Yugoslavians, that the United States gave a big push in the back to Kosovo Albanians against Serbs in the cause of Kosovo getting independent. But this is the point of view of Serbs and ex-Yugoslavs, of Slovenes, and so forth. And I'm really interested in what's your opinion, what's your stance, what's your vision about it. So it seems to me that you see Kosovo like some not totally, or not independent country at all.
Now, the issue of Kosovo is a part of the Eastern question. So the Eastern question, which culminated with the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 and the Congress of Berlin of 1878, when Austro-Hungarians invaded even Bosnia, and you, Slovenia, in the time, I think you were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So the issue of Kosovo is part of the Eastern question. Kosovo, like Palestine, like Syria, like Jordan, like Egypt, they were part of the Ottoman Empire, or Turkey. So until 1912, Kosovo je Turkija. Kosovo was part of Turkey, or Turkey in Europe. Then what happened is that during the First Balkan War, Serbs, they managed, together with the Bulgars and Montenegrins and the Greeks, they managed to defeat the Ottoman Empire, and they scrambled the Ottoman vilayets. Albania was created by the great powers of Europe on the insistence of Catholic Austro-Hungary and Italy to prevent the Serbs from coming to the Adriatic Sea. But Kosovo was given to the Serbs as a payoff for their victory against Turkey. Now, at the beginning of the 20th century, majority of Albanian Muslims, be them in Macedonia, or in Kosovo, or in Albania, they imagined themselves as Turks or Ottomans. But the Albanian modern identity was created with the sponsorization of the Austrians and the Italians. Now, if until 1912, or if until 1950s, the Kosovars, majority of them, imagined themselves as being Ottomans and dreamed of returning back to Turkey, what happened was that, especially with the fascist invasion of Yugoslavia by Mussolini in 1942 or 3, we have fascist Italy, who brings ideas of Albanian nationalism in Kosovo. Until 1950s, Kosovars wrote their language with Arabic script. So Kosovo was like Syria, was like Jordan. People were Muslim, they imagined themselves as being Ottoman, they wrote Arabic. But what happened with the fascist invasion, and later with the strengthening of Albania after the Second World War, and the policies of Tito on fostering Albanian nationalism in order to weaken Serbian nationalism and chauvinism within Yugoslavia, we have the birth of the myth of Kosovo as being part of Greater Albania. This myth, which first came in Kosovo from Ernest Kolici, who was a fascist minister, and Quisling of Mussolini and of Duce. These ideas later on became common in Kosovo, and during time of Yugoslavia, Tito tolerated Albanian teachers to come from Albania and to teach the Kosovars that they are not Muslims, they are not Ottomans, but they were Albanians. Now, Kosovo in the Albanian nationalistic or mythological narrative is imagined as being part of Greater Albania. Like in the Serbian mythology, it is imagined as being part of Greater Serbia. But as a matter of fact, and thanks to the discriminatory policies of the Serbs towards the Kosovars, and on the other hand, thanks to the work of Vatican through its missionary work and sponsorization of Muslims who converted themselves into Catholics, like Ibrahim Rugova, and by the way, Abdullah Hoti comes from the same, Catholic fascist ideology that Rugova embraced. Now they perceive themselves as Albanians, but not Muslim, but people who were Muslim, but who originally were Catholics and should revert into Catholicism. And today what you have in Kosovo is you have a kind of a nationalist and Catholic mixer ideology, where you see statues of Skanderbeg, who, by the way, was a Serbian hero, but Albanian nationalism depicts him as Albanian and as a Catholic. And you have the big cathedral of Mother Teresa, and people like Abdullah Hoti or Hashim Fachi, even though their names are Arabic and Islamic, and these people 30 years ago, they sat on the ground and drink chai like the Turks. Now they imagine themselves like being some kind of Catholic Europeans whose mission is to oust Serbia and its cultural heritage from Kosovo in Metohija. So coming back to the Americans and to the NATO intervention, Americans intervened, of course. They ousted, they removed Serbia, they used the anger of the Albanians, and they created a new state, which is not a real state, but which is a protectorate that we call Kosovo. What Americans did with the NATO intervention was against the international law. They broke the international law, they committed an aggression against Yugoslavia. I have to say this, even though I'm an Albanian, I have to accept the facts. And now the country that the Americans created after 1999 is not a country that represents the interest of the native Muslims of Kosovo. In Kosovo, the Muslim population is 96%, but Islam has no rights in Kosovo. Many imams and believers have been imprisoned. They are interrogated by the Kosovar Secret Service for the slightest thing. Islam was not admitted into the constitution of Kosovo. Children in Kosovo, they learn in their schools that they are Catholics who became a Muslim by Turkish terror, and they have to revert into the religion of Mother Teresa, who, by the way, even she was not Albanian, but she was Vlah from Skopje. And this is the mythology that modern Kosovar nationalism have, which was, went hand in hand with the imperialist interest of the United States. And why did the Americans intervene in Kosovo and broke off Yugoslavia? This is not because they love Allah and Muhammad or that they love Abdullah Hoti, but it is because it is imperialism, stupid. This is what they're doing in Xinjiang, in East Turkestan, when they're supporting the Uyghurs. It is not because they feel bad about what the Xi Jinping regime is doing against Muslims of East Turkestan, but it is simple and pure imperialism. But while the American presidents from Bill Clinton to Obama and George Bush and what have you, they were very imperialistic against Serbia, and they perceived Serbia as a hand of Russia in the Balkans, and this was the real politics even of during the Congress of Berlin and others. I mean, the great powers of Europe, the British, the Germans, the Austrians, they never wanted the Serbs to become bigger because they perceived them as an arm of Russian pan-Slavism. But now what we're having with the coming of Trump, and probably because Trump, he doesn't understand the geopolitics, this imperialist politics of the Anglo-Saxon world against the Slavic world is being replaced by a subordination to the greater Israel. And what we saw in the White House 2 days ago, where all the discussion was how to send 2 embassies to Jerusalem and not to deal with the real issue that Kosovo and Serbia have, is a real parody. I mean, Trump, he doesn't understand what is going on. His policies have been hijacked by his Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who plays everything from behind.
This is what interests me a lot. Slovenia has been a part of this Euro-Atlantic connections, being a part of institutions like NATO, like UN, EU for a while now. And there seems to be this consensus among Slovenes that we're a part of this Western civilization of European civilization. And we seem to equate, at least prima facie, Western civilization with these institutions of UN and NATO and so forth. And even if all this you told me now, and I'm aware of it, and I discussed this couple of Americans who agree with you too. What would be in your vision alternatives for Slovenes, for such small geographically and geopolitically unimportant countries like Slovenia? Do we even have any alternatives, or is the destiny of such countries as Slovenia basically being a slave of this Anglo-Saxon Zionist expansionism, imperialism, LGBTism, and so forth?
Well, 30 years ago, you guys in Slovenia, you had Yugoslavia, which in my opinion was a paradise on earth. The Americans, the Vatican, whatever, the Orthodox Church, the Mujahideen from whatever, they put you to fight and kill each other. So you destroyed socialism. Like we here in Albania were pushed by the Americans to destroy our socialist system that we had in Albania. During time of Enver Hoxha, Enver Hoxha was crazy, he was killing people, but in general we had a stability of life here. We had free health care, we had a guaranteed job, guaranteed housing. Of course, Albania was primitive, was not as industrialized as Tito's Yugoslavia, but still it was not very bad. Now, what happened with you and us was that the American invasion after the collapse of communism destroyed our economies, especially for us in Albania or even in Kosovo. I mean, in Kosovo, if there will be a liberalization of visas, half of the population is going to escape. I speak with many Kosovars who tell me, Olsi, during time of Tito, we had a wonderful life. We had 2-3 cars, we had big villas, we had guaranteed job, and we looked down at Europeans because they were poorer than us. Now, we live in a very critical moment of the history of Europe because even Europe itself is in a big crisis. Now, what is our alternative? We cannot turn back the Sovietsky Soyuz or Yugoslavia. They're gone, unfortunately. We cannot turn back the Ottoman Empire because European Christian imperialism destroyed it and put everybody to fight everybody. I mean, in the Balkans, Serbs were fighting the Bulgars, the Macedonians, the Greeks. The nationalism was a big stupidity. Now, what is the way forward? In my opinion, the European Union project was not bad. Why? Because even though it is dominated by the Germans and the French, at the very end of the day, it was promising to create a bigger Yugoslavia in Europe. So, I mean, for example, you Slovens who you have joined the European Union, in general, you have a much better life than we, the Albanians, or Macedonians, or Kosovars. Of course, you have lost many things that you had before, but at least you live in a kind of an economic empire where you can move freely from Slovenia to Berlin or to Paris, and you can find jobs and trade can go on, etc. But the problem is I mean, the American-Israeli factor, because they were not happy with the idea of the European Union. I did my PhD at the European University Institute in Firenze, in Italy, and I remember that many people who were working at the European Union were telling to us when we were students that the greatest enemy that we have is the Americans, but we don't dare to say it. And what Americans did, and the British as well, and stupid Sarkozy, with their wars in the Middle East, with the destruction of Iraq for the sake of Israel, with the destruction of Libya for the sake of Israel, with the destruction of Syria for the sake of Israel, the war against Iran, Lebanon, and what have you, have made a nightmare for us in Europe. I mean, if you are here in Albania, where I am now, you'll see hundreds and thousands of poor Syrians, Libyans, Palestinians who cross from Greece and they travel on foot. They want to come to Slovenia and from there to end up in Germany. So I think that after the disastrous wars that the Americans did, and with the destruction of the Eastern Bloc and the destruction of countries from Romania to Moldova to Bulgaria, what you have, and the mass exodus of Eastern Europeans towards London and Berlin and Paris to work, in my opinion, the European project was a good project. But the unfortunate thing is that the Americans, which means the Israelis, they did not allow this project to succeed. And you see, I'm a byproduct of the philosophy of the European Union because I studied in European institutions. And even though these LGBT and crazy groups within the EU put so many agendas, in general, the economic cooperation of us as Europeans for building a prosperous mega state, it was good. But what we are seeing today with America's war against China, with the biological coronavirus war that we're having between China and the United States, and moreover, the push of Israel that Israel does to the Americans to only do wars and wars and wars, part of which we saw during this latest agreement between Serbia and Kosovo, where instead of making peace between Serbia and Kosovo, you had Israel coming in and telling to the Serbs and to Kosovars, you have to declare war on Hezbollah because we are fighting Hezbollah. You have to send your embassy at the occupied Jerusalem because we are fighting the Palestinians. This is suicidal. This is death for Europeans. So the greatest enemy that we as Europeans have at this moment is American imperialism and the Israeli Zionism, which stands in the back of it. So what we have to do as Europeans, we have to make up our mind and to tell to these Yankees to get out of Europe and to build a new and a bigger prosperous Yugoslavia, which in my opinion is not possible for the time being, because we can see how the French, the Germans, the Austrians, everybody is afraid to stand up to the Americans, and Americans are doing all that they can to push them against the Russians and the Chinese. And on the other hand, we had the British who left the European Union, and now we have a chaos.
I'm interested in your opinion about, at least your speculation about it. What is when you say Americans as being our greatest threat and our greatest enemy, sort of say, what's the identity behind it? Is there any special American identity, or is there only Anglo-Saxon imperialism becoming in the last decades Zionistic imperialism? And when did, in your opinion, Anglo-Saxon imperialism become Zionistic imperialism, and why?
Well, if the American imperialism would have been Anglo-Saxon, that would have been a great thing, because after all, the Anglo-Saxons, they were people who built their own Pax Anglicana throughout the world. They civilized the Indians and many of their colonies. They created Canada, Australia, and what have you. The unfortunate thing is that today the Americans, they do not follow London anymore. They follow Tel Aviv. So today we live in an era of Pax Judaica, but it is not Pax Judaica because it is a war Judaica. The Israelis, wherever they go, they do not want peace; they want only war. So it is not a Pax like you had Pax Romana, the peace of the Romans. So the problem is that since the collapse of the Soviet Union and the disappearance of the nuclear threat from the Soviet Union, unfortunately, we have seen that the Jewish lobby has taken over the United States. We saw it, for example, we have seen in the Balkans with Soros, which in my opinion, even though he comes from a Jewish background, he's progressive, he's not like Netanyahu. I mean, Soros he fights for multiculturalism. Of course, he's a thief, and he has his own mafia, and they go around the world and they steal third world countries. But after all, Soros had a globalist vision. He was a globalist. But the problem is that the Zionists, the Netanyahu gang, who at present control the government of Albania as well, and of course the United States, they are warmongers. They want only war. Their dream is to totally destroy the Arabs, and all these Arabs to be pushed into Europe. And what we are seeing nowadays, we are seeing the Arabization of Europe. I mean, we're seeing the death of the nation state, which the European project was in a way as well, but the European project was the Europeanization. And today we're having the destruction of everything. We're having the destruction of the tradition, because that is why they push the LGBT agenda. They do not want us, the people of the rest of the world, to be humans. They don't want us to have families, to have kids. They want us to follow the LGBT vice. And so, I mean, what we're having today is that since the collapse of communism, slowly but surely, the Zionist lobby has taken over the American empire. And unfortunately, the English have not much say. And I would say, for as much as I understand that the English or the British, they are not very happy with what is going on, but they cannot do anything against the Americans.
Of course, there is plenty diversity amongst ethnic Jews, but what's your stance? What's your vision? What's your point of view on? It seems as if you see the Soviet Soyuz and Yugoslavia as at least for part of time a satellite of Soviet Soyuz as being positive projects. But what do you say about the obvious Jewish roots of Soviet Soyuz? What's your comment on it, and how would you comment on what was the agenda of these Jews that started Soviet Soyuz? I mean Trotsky and all the Bolsheviks being, I mean, 85%, if I'm not mistaken, of Jewish heritage. What's your comment on it?
Well, I think that we should not generalize for the Jews. Not all Jews think the same. The same thing goes for Muslims, because many people in the West who are Islamophobes, they perceive all Muslims as being terrorists, which is not true. And I have many Jewish friends, my professors were Jews, and I would say that Jewish communists, they were believers in a better world. Of course, they had their own reasons to hate the church and Christianity, like Masonry had the same reasons in Europe of the Renaissance to hate the Catholic Church, because they were oppressed groups of people. So they believed that they would be able to build a better world. Of course, what happened in Soviet Union, we had mass killings and pogroms and destruction, what happened. But, you know, I mean, we do not live in a perfect world. And I don't say that the Soviet Union was the best country in the world, but at least what happened, because, you know, every revolution when it comes, you start from the French Revolution or from the invention of Christianity and what have you. Every new ideology, when it comes with violence and terror. But later on, they build their status quo, and you have a peace. So, I mean, what we had in Eastern Europe during time of Soviet Soyuz, of Soviet Union, we had a kind of tranquility. I mean, people had jobs. Of course, we had some corrupt people at the top, but at least there was some kind of stability, you know. I do not want to go into, I mean, who the Bolsheviks were, who sponsored them. I know all the theories, but I don't think that they have any connections with the Zionists who are today in Israel. I'm an expert of nationalism, and in my opinion, Netanyahu is not different from Slobodan Milosevic or from Hitler. They are both extremist nationalists. I mean, if Hitler was believing in the pure Aryan race, Netanyahu believes in the pure Jewish race, which is a bullshit. The Jewish nationalism is an invention, like every kind of other nationalism, and Netanyahu has nothing in common with the religious Jews. I mean, I know many religious Jews who curse and hate him, and if you see or if you visit Israel, you'll see how the religious Jews are hated by the fascist establishment of Netanyahu. The problem that we have today is that while we in Europe defeated many extreme nationalist ideologies, from fascism to Nazism and the greater nationalism of Albania, of Serbia, of what have you, of Megali Idea, of the Greeks, and the European project brought us to our senses, and we understood that this all is stupid and we simply kill each other and nothing comes at the end. The problem is that the Zionists, they are pampered by the American empire. There is a progressive left in Israel which wants to bring peace with the Palestinians and with the Arabs and to build and to turn Israel into a democratic state. But what is unfortunate is that many Jewish bankers of New York and London, they go and sponsor the most extreme of the Jews. So this problem, apart from being a global problem, is also a local problem of the Jews themselves. I mean, many Jews hate Zionism. Like many Albanians, like me, I'm not a crazy Albanian nationalist. I don't believe in the stupidity of Albanian nationalism. So like me, you have many progressive Jews who hate this stupid ideology of Netanyahu, but the problem is that these people, they are powerless. They have been taken hostage by a thug, a gangster, a corrupt, who cannot, even the courts cannot jail him. And because he has some very powerful friends in Washington who control Trump, and we live in the world that we are today.
I know that you're not an expert for Austro-Hungarian monarchy and Slovenia, but I would like you to comment on this hypothesis, because I see you don't you see nationalisms as social constructs, and I agree with you that there are social constructs from at least 19th century and the so-called spring of nations. But would you say that nationalism was partly used as a tool against traditional monarchies in Europe? For example, Austro-Hungarian monarchy. I will present an argument or an example. For Slovenes, ethnic Slovenes, were even in 1918 and even in 45 after the World War II, were basically they felt more being attached to the Austro-Hungarian cultural and genetic pool or area, and they felt being forced into this unit with Serbs, with Yugoslavian monarchy, and then Yugoslavian Republic. And this is basically what is the one of the problems with Yugoslavia. Many Slovene intellectuals were killed after the World War II, and I'm interested. What's your opinion on that? How would you comment on that? As Slovene and Croatian and Serbian and Montenegrin nationalisms as being used as a tool against Austro-Hungarian empire and creating a Yugoslavian empire, and at the end ruining Yugoslavia. Is there any continuity? Is there any sense, or is this just being a 50-year plan madness, or what is this?
In my opinion, nationalism is product of the Christian Reformation in Europe. So the roots of nationalism, for me, they start with Luther. When you had these Protestants and Calvinists and what have you throughout Europe who start and rebel against the Pope. Look, Islam, and Catholicism and Orthodoxy, they are universal religions, which means that if you are a good Catholic, it doesn't matter if you are a Sloven or if you are an Austrian or if you are a German or Italian. You have Pope or the Holy Roman Emperor, which was the Austro-Hungarian, or the Habsburg Emperor, the one that you have to give your loyalty. So nationalism was used as a tool to destroy religion in the world and the religious empires. So the Austro-Hungarian Empire, like the Russian Empire, like the Ottoman Empire, they were all religious empires. What happened in Europe is that with the French Revolution, when the Masonry rose against the king and they created the Republic, the French Republic was the mother of all the nationalistic evil that we saw in Europe during the 19th and 20th century. So we had this Masonic revolution against the king and the church in France. And then we have the creation of the first state-sponsored nationalism, which was the French nationalism. We have Aleš Ernecl, one of the greatest philosophers of the French Revolution, who has a very famous essay with the title, "What is the Nation?" And in this essay, among others, Renan says, now that we destroyed the religion, we need to build a new religion. And this religion should be the belief on our predecessors, which is nationalism. And he says, but what we are saying, these things are not true, some are wrong, but he says nationalism remains or is built over a historical error. So what happened is that when the French revolutionaries, they destroyed the monarchy, they created the French Republic. And French Republic was a Masonic republic. And French Masonry, after that, it had to export its own version of anti-religiosity. And we have a series of wars in Europe from Bonaparte, and a number of terrorist groups who were sponsored by French nationalists, who culminate with the creation of Italy in the time of Mazzini and Garibaldi. And we have so many wars in Europe between the religious or the conservative Europeans who wanted to preserve a Christian Europe. And the axis of this was, of course, in Vienna, the Habsburg Empire. And on the other hand, we had the Masonic powers. The First World War was the last war against religion. We had three religious empires: the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire, where all these empires were defending Islam, Catholicism, and Orthodoxy, who were defeated and destroyed. In Russia, we had the installment of the crazy Bolsheviks, who destroyed and uprooted religion, tradition, the king, everything. We had the destruction and the scramble of the Habsburg Empire, and we have the creation of Hungarian, Slovenian, Croatian, what have you, nationalisms. And then we had the destruction of the Ottoman Empire, from where the institution of Islam, which was the Caliphate or the Sultanate, was destroyed. And we have the birth of so many Muslim nationalisms, starting from the Albanian nationalism, which was constructed as Catholic nationalism, the Turkish nationalism, Syrian, and what have you. So, coming back to your question about nationalism, nationalism was used as a weapon by international masonry to destroy religion. The First World War was the war where religion was condemned to death in our planet. The peace conference of Paris, where the American President Wilson, if I'm not wrong, brought the slogan of self-determination, created a new world order in our planet. The new world order said that if you speak Slovenian, you should create Slovenia. You should not live with the Austrians who speak German but share the same religion and the same ideology with you. If you speak Albanian, you have to create Albania. If you speak Greek, you have to create Greece. Religion is not important. You have to leave the Bible and the Quran aside, and you have to fight your neighbor because your neighbor doesn't speak your language. So this was the hate that nationalism instilled on the people. You can see, for example, the paradox. After these Christian Balkan states defeated the Ottoman Empire, they started killing each other. The Serbs went to kill the Bulgars went to kill the Greeks were killing the Bulgars, and everybody had a cross. Everybody was saying, oh, we have our king, and we are Bulgars who are more famous than you Serbs. No, we're Greeks, we wrote the Bible. So you had this invention of Christian nationalism, who, apart from killing its Muslim neighbors and doing huge pogroms in Belgrade, in Niš, in Sofia, in Athens, in Yanina against Muslims, after killing off their Muslim neighbors, then they started to kill each other. You have the example of Greece, where when the Greeks captured Thessaloniki or Salonika, they forced hundreds and thousands of Bulgars or Macedonians to forget their Slavic language and to start Hellenize themselves. So, I mean, nationalism was a crazy idea, which, in my opinion, culminated in the Second World War with Hitler. And by the way, coming back to our Netanyahu, for me, Netanyahu is a fossil of the 19th century. I mean, this state of Israel should have been created in the 19th century. It doesn't belong to modernity. I mean, it is a bygone ideology. I mean, is a fossil. But unfortunately, is that they have so much money, they control the banks, and because they control the banks, they control us, and they put us into a cycle of wars and terrorism throughout the world.
Olsi, Jazexhi, thanks for taking your time. Thanks for being so informative. Thanks for being so articulate. If anyone has anything to say against your arguments, he should invite himself to my YouTube channel. Maybe we can even arrange a debate or something. I hope you enjoyed our conversation too. Do you have anything else to say to my audience and to your audience?
No, I just want to thank you for having me, and I'll be very happy if I can find people who think differently from what I said. We live in a free world, thanks God. We don't live in a fascist Israel or a fascist Saudi Arabia or some other, or in China for that matter, where you don't have a freedom of speech. Something good that we as Europeans have is that since the time of Rinascimento or Renaissance, we have killed all the myths. And for our viewers, I want to tell them that we are so lucky that we live in Europe. We are more lucky that we live in Balkans because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like the Balkanic culture. I like the Greek, the Albanian, the Turkish culture, because we are people who are lazy. We live under a very nice weather and sun. We don't work like the Germanics or the Canadians work. I mean, we are people who stay in coffees and we love nature. And here in Albania during the summer, we have so many people who come from Eastern Europe and they enjoy our beaches. And we are people we are rebellious by nature. And I want to tell to all your viewers, keep on being rebellious, reject American Israeli fascism, and let's build a better world for each other. I mean, we shouldn't allow these Yankees, these evangelical idiots who come from some countries where they have problem with the sun and they keep on drinking vitamin D and ibuprofen and Tylenol in order to fight the problem that they have with their bones. So we live in a very nice planet of in a very nice place of our planet. I teach history at University of Durrës, and I tell to my students that when Allah created the planet Earth, He planted human beings in the Mediterranean. He planted us in Spain, in Italy, in Albania, in Lebanon, in Palestine, because here life is good. We don't need air conditioning. We don't need too much heating during the winter. Life is good. So we are the heart of human civilization, and we should be like we are, and we should say no to these American-Israeli dictates.
Thank you, Mr. Jazexhi, and I hope we'll talk to each other again some other time on some other topic. Thank you, and good evening.
Inshallah. Bye-bye.
Bye.